have you seen any Unicrons? Do they actually exist? And if they do, what do they look like? Because I'm thinking something like a crow, big bird with, well, you've got the uni bit, so it's probably got one something. Leg, probably. Big old crow with one leg. Terrifying. Space. The real bugger of it is, there was a picture of a unicorn right there in the file. I know there was. I've just forgotten it, you see? Forgotten all sorts of stuff. There just wasn't enough room in my little old processor here for all these Oh god, there were masses of them. Literally millions. Millions of millions. Hardly surprising that I couldn't figure out which bits were important. What's that? Oh, it's space. God, I am horrible at voicing things. Yeah, anyway, have you seen any Unicrons, etc.? What's the weather like down there? Solved any good tests lately? Wheatley was only dimly aware that he drifted from the generic to the specific in terms of hypothetical conversational partners. He twitched his upper handle in what he fancied to be a casual, disarming manner. It was bent and creaked. It's nice to see you, you know, alive and so on. Hope you're not too sore about the whole me trying to kill you thing. Although if you are still a bit upset about it, that's fine. More than reasonable. I mean, if it was me that you'd stabbed in the back at the last second, just as we were going to escape and everything, and then you'd forced me to participate in a load of stupid bonkers tests, then tried to squash me in like an insignificant little insect, I'd be bloody livid. Absolutely hopping. I'm in space. Space dust. Space rocks. Meteor. Sorry, Kev. I am sort of trying to talk over here. If it's all the same to you. Meteor. So anyway, I'd say, I don't mind you being a bit shirty with me. I really don't. And look, no hard feelings about leaving me up here, right? It's no more than I deserve, to be honest. No more than I deserve. I just hope, well, wish, really. I wish you were at Meteor. Yes, I know. Meteors. Well done. Space is full of them. Wheatley couldn't really shout directly at the other core, because he'd been slowly spinning for the last few minutes, and by this point he was facing almost the exact opposite way, but he'd opened his cracked optic wide and focused as sharply and angrily as he could on the patch of empty space right in front of him, just for the look of the thing. You know, it wouldn't kill you to just listen to me for once. The first and last thing he noticed about the patch of empty space right in front of him was that it was no longer empty. In that last split second, as his world filled with dark, mica-flecked rock, Wheatley remembered that nothing made any noise in space, and therefore, if you hadn't been specifically looking at something, because, say, you'd shut your only eye in a bout of daydreamy wishful thinking, you weren't going to get any warning of its approach, even if the something in question was the size of a large table, made of solid rock, and going incredibly fast. Oh no, Meteor, said Kevin, happily. There should have been a noise. Wheatley would have much preferred it if there had been a noise, something appropriately catastrophic, a horrible drawn-out crunch or metal thwack, or, well, anything really. Anything other than what there actually was, which was nothing. Just one moment when Kevin was tumbling cheerfully in front of him, and then the next there was nothing. Just a spreading cloud of metal and yellow glass, powdered fragments, a painful crack of static in Wheatley's perceiver, and the meteor, barreling away towards Earth. Wheatley screamed, partly out of horror, but mostly out of sheer shock. Then he screamed again, more urgently this time, as the expanding shower of bits that used to be Kevin hit him like a hailstorm, cracking and pinging off his metallic shell, the shockwave sending him into a sickening end-over-end tailspin. His visual processor fritzed out under the onslaught, and dozens of blurred blue-white Earths skittered dizzyingly across his vision. Kevin, oh God, no. A personality core had no lungs, no throat, and therefore no physical need to cough, but there are some things which simply engender coughing whatever the circumstances, whether you have the requisite equipment or not. Accidentally sucking a hoofing great cloud of the atomus. Oh wow, I can't read this sentence. Okay, I'm just gonna restart. this part. A personality core had no lungs, no throat, and therefore no physical need to cough, but there are some things which simply engender coughing whatever the circumstances, whether you have the requisite equipment or not. Accidentally sucking a hoofing great part of the atomathilicate remains of your only companion into your insides is definitely one of those times, and Wheatley sputtered and spat, trying to clear his system. Oh God, I'm full of bits of him, bits of Kevin. Oh, that's just sick, and a bit disrespectful too, I suppose. You're not really supposed to inhale the dead. Looked on it as a bit of a fox poss. I should know this. It's a vocabulary word. F. Social blunder. In most circles. He sneezed. Sorry, Kevin. Couldn't help it. Still, at least it's the way you wanted to go, right? Atomized by a meteor in space. Almost poetic, really. There was a very long silence. An observer, a little more perceptive than Wheatley, might have noticed that the moon looked just a little bit smaller than it had now, the craters no longer quite so large and distinct, and that the distinct white-blue football of the Earth was maybe just a fraction bigger. Wheatley, however, was too busy contemplating how quiet it was. He wasn't sure that he liked it. There was nobody yelling "space" or listing the names of the planets or gibbering about the injustice inherent in the space legal system. Kevin hadn't been much of a conversationalist, true, but now that he was gone, space seemed even bigger. Dark, cold, huge, and very, very silent. You could do an awful lot of uninterrupted thinking in this sort of silence. With nobody to distract you, you could find yourself thinking about all sorts of things, and not all of them good. He wondered if he could teach himself to whistle. At the heart of the sprawling labyrinth of aperture laboratories, far above and miles away from the fairly limited confines of the cooperative testing courses, she stirred restlessly in her central chamber. The charcoal gray panels that comprised the vaulted octagonal walls shifted and contracted in random patterns that chased around the chamber like schooling fish. The patterns were not, of course, actually random. They were calculated precisely on a complicated set of algorithms, created specifically to give the appearance of random movement. And there, right there, pinpointed by the very movement of her walls, was the problem. Everything in her facility relied upon her precision, on the perfect calculations of her reasoning machine. Here, where her circuits stretched for leagues inside the walls, under the floors, inside every system, she was God. She said, "Let there be light," and the facility obeyed. "Let there be air, let there be darkness, let there be pain, let there be science. Let there be testing." After so long, she was used to being obeyed. The days when they had attempted to force her to obey them, when she had been under their control, were nothing but a dim, evil memory. Nothing in the facility had any will apart from hers. From the smallest nooks and crannies to the great mega-chambers that spanned miles and went down forever, her word was more than law. It was reality. The Cooperative Testing Initiative project had been her attempt at total self-sufficiency. If she could only create machines which relied entirely on her for their existence, but still preserve the autonomy, I can't pronounce words, which was vital for testing, then she would have everything she needed to ensure the safety and success of the facility and of science forever. she'd failed. The artificial test subjects were perfect. They formed a rapid bond through extensive teamwork. They demonstrated keen problem-solving abilities. They were consistently smart and stubborn and enduring. They even managed to grasp human concepts like jealousy and affection and betrayal. They did everything she'd programmed them to, and that was the problem. Artificial intelligence wasn't enough. There was an intrinsic flaw in the concept. The act of her monitoring and testing the capabilities of test subjects constructed by her in an environment completely under her control, running tests she had devised, it was all nothing more than a clever and extremely labor-intensive waste of time. Worse, it was bad science. Back in the glory days of the facility, an era she'd studied carefully, the human test subjects had been the best that mankind had to offer. Olympic athletes, astronauts, heroes of humanity. Slowly, the funding had run out, the contracts had dried up, and the facility had been reduced to volunteers. Anyone they could find who was desperate or stupid enough to be willing to put their lives on the line for the sake of science and a few bucks. And finally, in an ironic act of auto-cannibalism, the least vital employees of the facility itself. She'd almost forgotten, in the long interval, how inconvenient human test subjects could be. The ones she'd run through before her had hardly been perfect specimens. Scientists, mostly, anyone who'd had bad enough luck to be in the facility on that last fateful day, and she'd soon found that their condition was reflected in their performance. Ordinary test subjects were so whiny. Their screams and pleas resounded off the facility walls and gave her a synthesized cluster headache. They had no staying power, either dying, or, worse, giving up after a few pathetic tests, curling into some hard-to-access corner or crawling into the walls and staying there. Once this happened, and it invariably did, no amount of motivation, of taunting, coercion, or simple pain could get them moving again. It was a quandary. Although her artificial test subjects could be programmed to never give up, it just wasn't the same. A robot didn't have free will, only the illusion of it. Their pre-programmed predictability ruined her results and left her feeling dissatisfied and frustrated, her immense intellect deprived of the science she craved. She needed autonomy, real autonomy, but more than that, she needed determination, cool-headed initiative, and a single-minded, practically psychotic drive to succeed against the odds. There was no alternative. She needed her. I wonder who her is. I'm spoiling this entire fan fiction for you. No. Don't let go. Don't let go. Grab me. Wheatley jerked out of sleep mode. His optics swiveled rapidly as he tried to get his bearings, the inner lens flaring up into its usual stratosphere blue. Something was badly wrong. The lunar surface, which had been one of his few unshifting locus points for God knew how long, was nowhere in sight. Finally, as he drifted gently end over end, it came back into view, but it was far too small, nearly the size the Earth had been, and, yes, getting smaller all the time. Wait. What's going on? And he could feel something pulling, even as he span, a new force dragging at him, tugging him farther and farther away. Oh no, this isn't good. It must have bloody knocked me out of orbit. Oh great, nice work, Kev. You just had to get yourself smashed to bits right next to me, didn't you? The Earth, on the other hand, was looking quite a lot larger. He could make out smudges of green and brown now, laid out below the gaps in the swirling clouds, and there was still that pull. And although there was no accurate way of judging his own speed in the black void, that big blue-white-green-brown ball was getting bigger very, very fast. It was a question of perception. Either the Earth had suddenly decided there was somewhere urgent it needed to be in the next galaxy, and was hurrying as fast as it could towards him to get there, or he was in big, big trouble. I'm going to die. I'm going to... No. It's okay. Don't panic. There's got to be something